All right, guys, so we're gonna run through some motions. The whole point of this playlist is to teach you these movements, breathing, isolated hip and shoulder movement. But we're just gonna start here with the workout. It's gonna combine a lot of different things that you'll learn later on in this playlist. Because this playlist, it takes some time just to get the hang of everything. So we're gonna start out with just breathing, because breathing is a big component in all of this. And we're just gonna think about getting into flexion. So much of us are in extension all day long. We're gonna pull into flexion here, and that allows us to breathe from the stomach. So we're trying to get a breath into the stomach, expand the chest. We're just gonna do that for 30 breaths. Go ahead and start that. So inhale, pulling that belly button in, just big loud breaths. Trying to get the breath even down to the tailbone, chest expanding. Keep working through those. Don't really have to think about, posturing up too much. Just try to get that breath in the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. Try not to use your shoulders too much. Air inflating the chest. It should be big and loud. In through the nose, out through the mouth. We're going to build upon this principle. Let's do 5 more. It's okay if you didn't get to 30. And on the 5th one, you're not going to take a big inhale, but just a relaxed inhale and just hold it. Now if you've got a clock, try to hold this for a minute. Just relax. Try to keep some of that expansion in your rib cage. Even with just those few breaths, you might even feel your lower rib cage, just some fatigue, some tightness in the muscles that you're just not used to using. That's the whole thing, is we're expanding that rib cage, and then we're going to work on lengthening it. But first, it's getting that engagement here and expansion. So keep holding that minute if you're waiting for it. And I'm just going to move to the next position. Just a relaxed position here, and we're just resting on our heels. And this is going to allow us to even pull in even more here. So after you're done with that minute, we're going to kind of about a 3-second, 4-second inhale, just to allow that air to expand that rib cage. So let's do another 20 of these. 20 because they're a little bit slower. Expanding again those muscles, base of the rib cage. And the different mechanic here you'll probably notice is we're so used to pinching our shoulder blades. Here we're actually driving them wide to make room for the ribs. And I want to hear those breaths, big inhales, longer inhales than before, just to get that engagement. And the fancy name for the muscle that pulls those rib cage down in the back is the posterior serratus inferior. It has a brother that's up here, which we're going to work on next. That's a breathing accessory muscle that's underused, especially in that area where your thoracic changes into your lumbar curve. We don't get a lot of movement. It's very tight. And a lot of us tend to extend right at that area, and that just shortens everything and compresses the spine. So go ahead, we'll try just a 20-second hold here. Ready? Pulling in, kind of inflating like a balloon. Just kind of expanding for that full 20 seconds. Should get kind of shaky. Good. So one more little breathing exercise, and we'll do some standing stuff. I like the knees together. Try to tuck your toes in, but keep the feet wider than your knees. And that allows you to squeeze, turn the hips in. So we call the measuring stick hands. We're lengthening this space, but also engaging. And that kind of puts us in that same position before. Little glute squeeze here at the end. And now we're gonna do longer, maybe even 7-second, 8-second inhales. I put the hands right here because I want a little neck lengthening at the end of that breath, so you'll see that happen. That was out through the nose. Practice that because we get that inhale through the nose, which is hard enough, but letting that slow exhale happen out through the nose, that's all the pressure from your two diaphragms, the diaphragm and the pelvic floor, that increase that pressure, intra-abdominal pressure and lung pressure, and then push it out instead of just using your spine to do it. So again, inhale, the elbows are squeezing towards each other, neck's getting long. Fighting for even that 10 seconds. Let's do like 3 more of those. Squeezing the inner thighs together. Everything is contributing to length. We're still trying to get that expansion, just now adding that length component. 2 things at once. Because we do want that chest to open. We just don't want to extend the spine. Because it looks like I'm opening my chest, but I actually haven't done anything from the shoulders. I've just bent at the spine. And you'll notice, because then you've lost your engagement there. That's why we're starting with that. We're pulling in. And then at the very end, we're expanding the chest, lengthening the neck. That way we don't rob Peter to pay Paul. Everything doing its equal share. Good. Let's do one more. Just do another 10-second, maybe fight for 15, 20 seconds. Think about lengthening, pulling that breath in. You'll notice these will get harder the more you do them because you'll be able to find that tension and push against it. Tall and lengthened. Awesome. And that stretch here, back of the neck, there's where you're going for. So now we're gonna do some platter exercises. So I'm gonna start wide, since I just did narrow. This is called a wide platter, where you're gonna lengthen, same hip hugger position, knees aren't locked. There's a lot of little steps. I'm gonna try not to hit them all because there's just so many. That'll come in time. We lengthen, we make sure we got that length, and then we serve the platter. It's a wide platter, big old tray. Inhale, come back. Make sure you haven't lost your space. Especially if you extended the spine to come back, you'll notice, oh man, it's an overstretch. Or if you're rounded, you'll notice there's not enough space. It's just that nice in between where I can touch the pelvic bones and the ribs. I can tell there's engagement and there's length. We're opening up those discs in the lumbar spine, and that strengthens it. So let's do 6 of those. So we're gonna exhale, inhale. And that's the hardest part, is pulling yourself back up with your hips, not leaning back with the spine to do it. Keeping that stiff spine the whole time. Keep going, let's get another 3 in here. Again, these will be harder the more you do it. Good. You should feel that everywhere. Next, we're going narrow. Big toes together, heels apart. You don't want them too far apart, and it helps to have some grass you can grab. Squeeze those inner thighs together, if you can get them there. Same thing. Hugging those hips in, turning the hips in, engaging, making sure you got that space. Now the platter, it's a little tiny platter. Inhale. 10. So keep going. I'm just going to explain one thing here. We want the elbows to roll in and pretend it's an actual platter. You know, if you're here with it, it's going to fall. A lot of people do that. Want to serve that platter out, rolling in. And you should be kind of knocking yourself over when you're doing this. You should feel like, wow, I'm going to fall backwards. That's where you know your weight's in your heels. You'll get that good hamstring tension. So do a couple more of those. Thinking about that. Less of a hip hinge here, but it's still coming back. The elbows are moving away from the hips. You see the feet come up, and that's when you want to grab. Forces your feet to actually grab the ground. So much we let that pelvis shift forward. Compresses the arches. We don't grab as much when we're weighted in the heels like this. So all these exercises are exaggerating that. All right, let's take a little break from that. Go wide, and it's okay if you round your spine here. Just relaxed, get down to the ground. You can go wider if you need to. Let's just do 20 breaths here. Big expansion breaths, letting the shoulder blades get pushed out of the way by that rib expansion. So we'll work on this later. Right now, just find that hamstring tension. But we'll try to do a version of this where we're not so compressed, where the shoulders aren't pulled up and around it. But for right now, just breathe, right? Just breathe. And don't be afraid to reset if you feel really slouched. Like, you can definitely, you know, once you're there, you can hold it. But once you come down into a bad position, you can't really correct yourself out of it. You have to almost go back to the top. See if you can get a better hold. The neck's a little bit longer, spine's a little straighter. We'll work on that later. 3 more breaths. You're pulling in, you're expanding. The neck is lengthening. You're getting that tremble in the hamstrings. Awesome. So now we're gonna do some split stance stuff. Shake it off. Left foot forward, right foot back. You want to lift that heel just a little bit, just so you're on the balls of the foot. You can see how that kind of pushes me over top of my front hip. About 80% of that weight is on that front hip. Just holding this sometimes to get a nice little ache. Check yourself there, make sure you've lengthened that lumbar disc space, opened up all those facets, the chest is broad. Now we're gonna do what's called the sphere of tension. All fingertips, like you're grabbing a big grapefruit, just getting around it. And we're gonna spiral a little bit. So my right elbow is kind of coming towards my left knee a little bit. Just hold that, maybe go a little bit farther. This one's just more about a sustained hold. But we're gonna slowly bring this overhead, but slow and controlled so we don't lose our engagement. If you feel like you've lost your engagement, lengthen, come back up, and then 1 breath, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we come up at that spiral, we keep that. A lot of us have rotation in the spine. This is a good way to combat it. And the same thing, let's come back down, back to the center. Let's do that one more time. Get that little spiral, but keeping the length. Again, try not to let the spine do the work. Letting the hips lift you. Overhead, you're gonna feel this a lot in the neck. Should be shaky like this. It's harder the more you do it. Switch that up, right foot forward. And a lot of these exercises might not be making sense just yet. That's what the playlist is for, because you can't really hinge or squat until we teach the body to hold that decompression stance. And that's the hardest thing, is breathing. Breathing, then trying to breathe in these positions. Doing this for about 4 years and I still haven't mastered it. Always learning, always getting better. Little spiral. Sometimes at the top here, I like to switch between the platter, maybe even roll the shoulders out, back to sphere of tension. Let's do that one more time. Let's reset. Anytime you feel like you've lost your engagement, reset. Good. Let's go super wide. Lengthen. It's harder to pull the hips in here. Try to keep the ball, the little toe down. And we're just gonna hinge a little bit. Elbows together. See if you can get 20 of these. So that's one. Don't let the chest cave in. Keep going. You want chest broad, engaged with the hip hinge. If you're back here in extension, it's easy. But as soon as we've lengthened, we've hinged, that's when it's hard. Try to keep as little rounding in the mid back as you can. Don't let yourself get too much here. That neck long. Good. After 20 of those, we do that same forward fold, just more strict. So if you can't get down, I'll show you what to do. We're gonna go more straight down, maybe add a hinge first, and then bring that as low as you can get it. Now you might be able to just hinge, find the ground there with a fingertip. That's good. Let's just breathe there. It's okay if you're here though. I don't want you here where your spine's all compressed and your shoulders are hugging your ears. So you're gonna find that tension on your own. Hinge, find that tension. That might be all you got, that's okay. I'd rather you be here than where you've compressed yourself to there. Another 10, 15 breaths. This is a good position if you want to do a little rock. Okay, let's do a few squats here. So a little more narrow. Sphere of tension. I like to teach the hinge before we squat here, and then opposite hand to opposite knee. Shoulder keeps you from getting too compressed. So you can do 5 on each side, or you can switch it every time if you want, like that. Just trying to keep yourself broad, so the hinge, then the squat, hinge, then the squat. You should feel that inner thigh working because you're a little isometric. Left knee pushing into that hand, same thing with the shoulder. Just working that. Good for the ankles. Should be getting pretty fatigued in those lower back muscles here. Good, let's end with a little breathing drill. So we'll start nice and lazy. Just kind of fold it up here. Same thing, we're gonna expand that rib cage as we breathe, so. If you get close to my low back, you can see that subtle motion. We're trying to get that expansion into. For
so many people, we have to come into this rounded posture before we can learn to lengthen. We have to get rid of that extension that we're so used to going into. Do a few more there, and then you're going to transition into what's called the 8-point plank, which is just a stricter hold, knees a little bit apart. Start laying. Get your elbows where they're almost line of the forehead, and then you're going to inhale, lift the hips and the neck. Head first, then hips. 10 breaths here. You should sound like this. A lot of shoulders, a lot of neck here. 10. Should be shaky. Go back to your child's pose position here. Just nice little hip hinge. Breathing. Expanding those shoulders. You can claw the ground if you want to, get some length. After you've done a few, we'll go back. You're gonna repeat this as many times as you want, but we'll end the video here. Give my If you look at the spine from the side, it should be pretty straight. Ear, shoulder, hip in a diagonal straight line. We don't want to be too slouchy. We want to get like we're pushing up against. Someone put like a big sack on your back and you have to constantly push up. Your right elbow is pulling to your left knee and vice versa. Everything kind of pulling into your solar plexus area. Everything's squeezing right into here where we were working before. It's all that same position there with breathing. So work on that. That's a little snippet for the workout we'll be doing. And just a little idea of what we'll be getting to eventually in this playlist with all the breathing. Dr. Klein out.